Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Insta Runners Roundup podcast. Here we celebrate the running achievements of people throughout the Scottish Instagram running community. Today we are a bit short in numbers from the usual lineup, but instead we have a special guest joining us who has just completed the Ultra Scotland 50 alongside our co-host Jimmy Bunter. I'd like to welcome Jimmy, Mike and Stevie McKenna, aka 100 kilograms to 100 kilometres. How are we, guys?
Hello.
Hey guys.
Good.
Good.
All good.
Good.
All good. Excited to have Stevie on.
Just like to welcome Stevie again. Thank you very much for joining us today, mate. It's a pleasure. Obviously, you were running the 50 with James last week, it was. So I'm really just looking for you to kick it off for us today and give us a wee bit of your background, how you got started, and any information you want to share with us.
Well, I guess if we go right back to the start, like when I was younger, I was not into running at all. When we were at school, I've got a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, and running was his thing, and he was pretty damn good at it. He went on. He was competing for Scottish schools. He was at various home country meets, and he actually went on to captain the Scottish schools cross country team. So from my point of view, it was just like, hey, that's your thing. You go do that. And I really just didn't really run when I was younger. And then back in 2012, I blew my ACL when I was snowboarding. And as part of the kind of recovery and the physio program for that, to ultimately get me back into the mountains, it was just a load of strengthening on my knee for the first kind of 10 weeks. And then after that, they said, right, let's try some gentle running on it. No change in direction, nothing fast, just straight backwards and forwards, see how you get on. So in my head, I thought, right, I'm goal driven. If I give myself a target here, if I say, right, by the end of this rehab program, I want to be running 10k, and we'll aim for that. And I went out on the first day and I ran a mile, and it was fine. And I think just the sort of the way I work, I was like, well, if I can do a mile, what can I do the next day? Can I do 2 miles? And I went out next day, 2 miles, no flare ups, everything was fine. By the end of that week, I'd ran my 10k that I was planning to run over the whole thing. So I needed a new goal for that, and I ended up entering the 2013 Edinburgh Marathon. And
what was the time frame between running that 10k and the marathon?
Pretty well from surgery. Surgery was kind of the end of May 2012, so I had a full year there. We're probably talking about August, September time, maybe by the time I started running. So there was a big window there, and I knew nothing about. Oh, aye.
So it was a sensible,
a manageable
achievement.
I was also aiming to get back on the snowboard over that winter period as well. But I went into it, I had one friend that had ran marathons before. I had no training. I had no kind of idea of what I was doing. I was just running for the sake of running. And it was, if I could run, 10 miles one day, could I go just that little bit further the next day and the next day? And then ultimately rolled round to 2013, went to Edinburgh, and, again, and I didn't have a circle of friends that were all runners, but people had said, oh, if you can go sub 4, that's amazing. And I went out and I finished in, I think it was 3:49:56. So from my point of view, it was like box ticked. I don't need to do that again. Done a marathon. I'm not going to improve on that. Happy days. But I liked the just the headspace of being out running. So, things ticked over for the next 3 or 4 years. I would and I still do the Great Scottish Run every year. There's something nice about running over the Kingston Bridge. You don't get a chance to do it normally. Well, you don't get a chance to do it normally unless you want to get arrested. But just that view you get when you run over it. So I'd say probably for the next 3 or 4 years, I'd either do the 10k or the half. But I wasn't running much. I was maybe doing a 5k, a 10k here or there every week. That was really it.
Was that to go alongside a wee back
it was just a fitness thing. It was just, I've always been a big lad, and it was just trying to do some gym work and do that, but not really committing to any sort of long-term goals. It was just like, oh well, that's rolling about in October time, so I better start doing some runs kind of like August time and get ready to do it. And then in 2017, the company I worked for, they were sponsoring a team for the Bath Half Marathon, and they're based down in the southwest. So for me, it was an opportunity to get down and see some friends. Went along, done that, but then off the back of that, I was like, well, I've actually built up built my fitness back up again. So what else can I do? And that year they had the inaugural Stirling Marathon happening. So I was like, well, I've done Edinburgh. Let's go and do Stirling, and it was horrible. I don't know if anybody else's had done it that year, but you basically the
Which year was
2017,
that?
so the first year when they started you out at Blair Drummond's, you ran out through doing up to Dunblane, you came back down into Stirling, but as you came into Stirling, you were on mile 18, and then you started doing laps of Stirling. So as you're coming in just before the finish line, you join the lap. So I'm coming in looking for a sub 4, and I've got 3 laps to do. Meanwhile, there's guys who are on their 25th mile that are going for sub 3. So you're running in at your pace, and suddenly these guys are just flying past you. And then as the laps went on, you suddenly became the fast person that was running past the slower people. It was horrible. It was horrible.
Go you at PTSD
Mike's
for Edinburgh.
experienced that not that long ago with that look thing he was doing, where he found out very quickly he was the slow guy getting looked by people.
Oh, that was one at Perth. I went to. That was funny
Yeah.
watching him go absolutely roasting
That
hot.
was his
And all these, I think
100k
they're
that he was
Olympians,
doing.
some of them by the sounds of it. Aye, it was funny just watching these people. They didn't even look like they're that effortless in their technique. They didn't even look like they were trying, and they were obviously running a decent enough pace.
No,
See, listening to you as well, Stevie, just straight off the bat as well. Sorry, and obviously you know a wee bit now because you've seen your videos and stuff. Like it comes across as your videos do, you're driven. Like obviously you'll get on it for your training stuff, but like you're like, oh, if I can do a mile, I'll do it, and then you do it, and you're like, actually, you know what? I could probably do more than a mile. I'm going to try more than a mile, and then I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try that, and that comes off kind of
well, funnily
away.
enough, after doing Stirling, the following weekend was the Edinburgh Marathon, and I had a mate that was injured and was pulling out, and he'd said to me, he's like, "Do you know anybody that wants a number?" And I stupidly thought, well, can I do back-to-back marathons? Can I do a marathon on one weekend and go and do it the next weekend? And I had zero respect for the recovery that was needed in between that. But I found myself lining up on the start line.
Have you got any idea what kind of mileage you were doing at this point per week, Stevie, to go and
Well,
try and do
not
two
for
back
that
to
one.
back?
I know for some of the other stuff that I mean, I think not so much for that one, but I know other stuff I was coming on to when I look at the miles I was doing, it was just ridiculous. Like I went to try and do a back to back, and I absolutely blew up. Like I was fine out to Gosford House, and then I'm going to say, fortunately, I had some taping issues that I had to get sorted at the first aid tent, so that gave me a break. But then once I hit mile 20, I just completely blew up. But I mean, that was a kind of a lesson to me. But again, off the back of that, I was like, well, I've got the fitness now. If I go and run another 4.9 miles on top of this, that's suddenly I can tick that box off. I've done an ultra marathon and run the Blades, which happens at Whiteley's Wind Farm, which I can, if I look out my window, I can see it up in the distance, and I take the dog up there all the time. And I was like, well, you know what? Let's go and do that. But you're talking about the sort of miles I was doing. It was 8 weeks away from the end of the marathon, and looking back through Strava now, like I was putting in something like 80 miles over those 8 weeks of training.
That was the exact same as my first ultra. I done Edinburgh Marathon, and then I hadn't done anything over the marathon distance obviously before that, and I had maybe 4 or 5 weeks to get ready for Run the Blades. I probably had a really good base fitness here. I hadn't had any injuries for ages though, and I managed to do the same as what you've done there, go and run RTB, and I did love that.
I think in my
really
head,
enjoyed
I
it.
was just like, right, I'm fit, I've done this marathon, so I'll just tick over. But knowing what I know now, it's like how I got away with it. I mean, I got around. It was like 6 hours and 4 minutes. But yeah, I should have put a lot more effort into it to make it a bit more enjoyable. But yeah, 2017 was that. I think that was that kind of year where I stepped up. But again, once I'd done that ultra marathon, I was like, well, that's that box ticked. I don't ever have to do that again. Done a couple of marathons, well, a few marathons at that point. I've done an ultra marathon. Like, what else is there for me to do? And then over the next few years, I kept ticking over. I did go back to Stirling in 2019. They changed the course by that point. So
I did that
it
one.
was okay, but again, I hadn't put the effort in, and I blew up after 19 miles, and I think I came home in about 4:15. I was targeting sub 4, but I think that was more I think that was my fifth consecutive rejection from the London ballot, and because it was the same day, I was like, well, I'm going to go and run something. And then we get to 2020, and I think that's where most people's kind of story seems to start with running. And for me, it was because of COVID, but probably not for the same reasons that everybody else has got. So back in March 2020, my daughter decided to make an unscheduled appearance into the world 12 weeks early. And due to the size of her, she was born with chronic lung disease, and she ended up spending 2.5 months in the local neonatal unit at Wishaw Hospital. She needed round the clock care, and she was on oxygen 24/7. Looking back at it now, and myself and my partner talk about this, like, we've got no idea how we managed to cope with it in the way that we did, because if you think back to March, like, COVID was a thing down south. It wasn't really a thing up here, but it was definitely coming this way. And then kind of towards the end of March, that's when lockdown kicked in, and at that point we were kind of up until lockdown kicked in, we could get 24/7 access. We could go and see her whenever we wanted. We only stay a couple of miles from the hospital, so you could literally be sitting at 11 o'clock at night and look at each other and be like, "Will we go and see her?" And off you would go. But then once lockdown kicked in, to protect the babies, it was like an hour a day. That was all they got. So between going to see her for an hour and then having that 1 hour that you could get out of the house, like, running was just a mental release for me. I could just go, I could switch off. Where I stay, I'm quite fortunate. Like, if I go 500 meters that way, I've got the Clyde walkway right on my doorstep, so I can leave here, go down there, and it just feels like it's a million miles away from the town. But yeah, like, it was good to get out of the house and just, I'm going to say, not think about things, but think about things as well, that maybe I wasn't process either what I'd seen that day, or process the updates we've been getting through the app for her, but also just getting that time alone just to think about things. But throughout it, the kind of the running joke was, I mean, the staff there were brand new, and I will forever be indebted to them. Like, we laughed and joked with them that they're the best babysitters. You couldn't even buy them with, money wouldn't buy their services. But at the time, the running joke was it was going to cost me 26.2 miles at some point to raise money, not for the unit, but for the staff actually looking after her. 2020, obviously nothing really happened. 2021, things started getting back to normal, and rather than doing a marathon, I went back to run the Blades and done the 50k again. And again, this time around, it was like 5 hours and a minute that I came through it in. So yeah, I think having that motivation there, I ended up raising £1,600 for the staff. And at the time, I thought, well, that's good. And then 3 years later, when my son was born, he ended up having a really, really short visit to neonatal, literally in for like 12 hours. And we walked in there, and right behind the reception desk is still the giant check that we gave them. So it just, it kind of gave me a drive to, gave me a reason to go and run.
Yeah.
Keeps you going.
But then, all the way through it, like, you're just looking at this wee bundle of skin and bones in an incubator, and she didn't know how tiny she was. She didn't know all the odds that were stacked against her. She didn't know about COVID and all the rest of it. And I just thought to myself, if she can fight like hell with the start that she's had, then what can I do if I start applying myself? And I think at that point it was just that whole new level of motivation of, no, let's actually do something here.
I kind of get that as well. My son was 7 weeks early, and obviously not any of the issues that obviously you've spoke there, but yeah, seeing them in neonatal, he was in for the first couple of weeks as well. It's you have to clear your head, kind of, because you're powerless.
No.
Like, when you see them hooked up to stuff, and nothing you can do, and especially, thankfully, this is obviously 11 years ago, but doing that through COVID, and you kind of see them
No, I think it was, again, like I said earlier, we look back at it now and we're like, how were we so calm about it? And I think it's that kind of swan mentality of up here everything was fine, but below the water we were just paddling away and doing whatever we had to do to kind of be there for her. So yeah, running was just a massive release for me. Yeah,
It's that thing. Like everybody always says that you just take it for granted that we can go out and we can run 20 miles, and it's like you said, like you see them fighting or whatever their fight is, or whoever it is has got a fight and they can't always do it, and we just take it for granted we can go out on a Tuesday and run 10 miles, or go out on a Saturday and run 50 odd miles, and really you should be thankful that your body
it's
allows you to
something
go out and
it's
actually do
something I've
these
said.
kind
I've
of
had a
things.
couple of messages during the training block with people saying like, how do you get yourself in the right frame of mind to go out and do a 20-mile run before work on a weekday? And it's that reframing of, I don't have to go and do that. Nobody's forcing me to go and do that. I get the opportunity to go and do that, and it's my choice to go and do that. And I'm grateful and thankful that I can go and do that, because, like you say, there's other people that can't.
It's where it becomes discipline, not motivation. You don't need motivation to do something. It's just the complete discipline that you know what that does for you. That's certainly how I feel about it. That I have the discipline because I know when I come back out for another, if I've had a crap day, or if I miss Georgie because I've not got her that day, few days or whatever, I can go out run and I didn't forget all that.
Yeah.
But it allows you to process it, and you come back and you're like, all right, it's not actually that bad, because everything will go another day. It's never
I mean, like
sometimes
my
is the end
day
of the
job,
world,
I'm
but
a software engineer, and I'm really fortunate. So since COVID, I've been fully remote, and I never really got this. People always talked about this work-life balance, and I never understood it before I had kids, because when I left work, it was my time and I could go and do whatever I wanted. Whereas now, I sometimes do some of my best thinking first thing in the morning when I'm out on a run. If I've been dealing with a problem the day before, or trying to think about an algorithm or a piece of code, and then suddenly I go out for a run in the morning, and it just ran like the random thoughts that just come into your mind, because it's your time. Nobody can get to you. You can just think about whatever you want to think about when you're there.
I'm the exact same. I'll go to a run and I'll come back and I'll go to Sarah, I've had an idea, and she'll be like, oh, here we go. What you been thinking now? Because when you're out, you're just like, you're churning through stuff, and you'll come back and you're like, I've got an idea. I think I've been thinking about this race, and she'll be like, oh, here we go. Every time you go out, because like you said, there's no there's nothing. It's just you churning through whatever it is you want to churn through and get out your system. It's brilliant. To me, it's one of the best bits.
I think it's a necessary thing as
Getting
well.
out, but I'm not sure if I would get that by running as such, like down the streets or around the roads or whatever. For me, I think it's the actual taking yourself out completely, or that into like almost silence. I know I mocked it on like my videos when you're out there with nothing, but to me, that's just absolutely amazing. Just being out there with absolute silence, bar the trees and stuff, and the birds and whatever else. It's just, I love that.
So was Run the Blades then, Stevie? Was that your last race completely before you done Glasgow to Edinburgh?
There would, so if that was 2022, there would have been a Great Scottish Run in there if that happened. In fact, there might even have been, that might have been the year that I'd done the Glasgow 3/4 marathon. So I went and ran the 10K with one of my mates. We got to the finish, put the 10K t-shirt on, go back to the start, and then run the half marathon. And you see all the looks on the people, on like the stewards and that, as you're running around, like, how'd you get that t-shirt on? But aye, that's after that. I then looked at the Glasgow Edinburgh Ultra in 2022, and for me, again, that was just that next step of, I can do it. Yeah, no, I was looking up my times, and I was looking to see where you came. It's nuts how now that I like back.
How did you finish that one? Where did you
time wise? I was 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 56 seconds. So, but yeah, it's nuts. Like back then, I was a solo runner. Like I just, similar to what you said, Jason, about the Edinburgh Marathon you went along to, or was it the half you went along to, where you just turned up, done your race, sat at the end, didn't know anybody, and left. And up until probably last year, that was me. So Glasgow, Edinburgh, that was my next kind of step out of my comfort zone. Like 56 miles scared me because that's a long distance. It's a long way.
It's a long way.
You guys will know yourself. You can only train for so much. You're not going out and running, a 50-mile training run. You're not going out and doing what you would do in a marathon, where you're going just shy of the distance and thinking, right, that's in the bag. I think for me, the longest run I'd done on that was 37 miles to Linlithgow. And in my head, I was like, well, it's fine. It's only another half marathon to Ratho, and that's where the family will be. That'll give me a boost, and then on I'll go. But yeah, that was hard going that day.
I think this is what I need to
That's
get my head
still
around for Glasgow, Edinburgh.
37
don't
miles
need
for your training run. That's an absolute. That is a fair distance.
I think I did 32.
I mean, I wanted to scope the course out, and I know that sounds silly because it's flat, but in my head, I wanted to know, okay, well, when you get to this point, then the next checkpoint is here, and just so when you're running, you can visualize what's going to happen. And I think that the one thing that I would have changed about that is I didn't run that stint from Linlithgow into the end, and if I was doing it again, I would definitely go back and run that, just so I know that when you're going through Broxburn and all the rest of it, you know exactly what's coming around the corner. It was horrible the day I was running it. I was in a wild pain. But
what was the weather like for your one in 2022?
No, it was. You know what? It was okay. It was okay. It started off. I think it was wet maybe until about. What's the first checkpoint you can through, Mike? Up 12 miles in. I can't remember.
12 miles
North Lanarkshire. I should know where that is, but.
Yeah,
so I was the exact same. I had a jacket on, and when I got to that checkpoint, jacket off, and after that, it was fine. It was fine. It was nowhere near as.
I think there was one wee rain spell in the middle, if I remember right.
Yeah, but there's bits of that canal path where when it rains, you just can't avoid the puddles. So when I was doing my training run from the Riverside Museum out to Linlithgow, it rained. It took me about 7 hours to do that, and it rained for 6 of them, and it was just you were just soaked. But again, nowhere near as bad as what the guys had last year. Last year was horrific. Absolutely horrific.
Worst ever.
You were that one though, Jimmy, were you not last year? Getting drowned?
Well, my jacket was absolutely amazing.
You don't get me.
Complain last year. I'm back. No, last year my jacket was fine. Everything else was soaked. I'd meant to have a change of clothes and stuff at Falkirk, but I just didn't even bother. It was completely pointless because by the time you got up and through the bridge, the tunnel at the top, and then back out, you'd have been soaked. So I just kept my soaked gear, and that was it.
Did you do anything different then for this race, Steve? I know obviously it's been not so much a year since your last one, but had there been anything you've done differently in terms of your training for Glasgow Edinburgh, given the additional distance
what the difference between Glasgow and Edinburgh
I think Run the Blaze, you said the previous one before that was in terms of
again, Run the Blaze was just I'd already done that distance before, so I knew that. But the big thing for Glasgow Edinburgh was back-to-back long runs. That was the thing that everybody said you need to get used to running on tired legs. So that was just again for me my long runs tend to be Thursday Fridays because that works round about the family, and that's the one golden rule that we've got. If I'm signing up to any sort of stupid events, it's got to be my training fits round about the family rather than the family fitting round about the training. So that's why you see me out at 4 o'clock in the morning doing a marathon before work, or out at 6 o'clock at night afterwards. Occasionally you can't avoid it, but the kind of the golden rule is I always want to be here for bedtime.
I think as long as you put in the effort in to consider them.
But yeah, it was training wise, it was great, and I was talking to you earlier on, Jason, about your potential training for Glasgow Edinburgh this year. I put in a solid 10 weeks of it. It was all going great, and then 5 days beforehand, my daughter gave me a absolutely cracking sore throat, and I was that close to not turning up at the start line. And it was some random person on Strava said, turn up, and take a DNF over a DNS. And I was like, do you know what? That makes sense. Like, turn up, start running, and if it gets really bad, I'll pull out. I'll walk away from it. But that was the best piece of advice I got. I had kind of 3 goals, and I listening to people. I tend to do my goals the other way about. I know people tend to have like their A goal, and then their B goal and their C goal. I go the other way, where it's like, okay, well, here's my first goal, and if everything goes well, then I'm going to have my kind of a stretch goal at my B goal, and
I noticed this for your goals last week that they were for what I would consider.
Maybe that's something I need to change mentally. But my first goal, first and foremost, I'd never done that distance. It was double the distance I'd ran in an event before, so I just wanted to finish.
I think mentally though it does work, because you could potentially knock off, even if you don't get your your main goal, you're still getting 2 of the 3, so you can look at it, that's a positive that you're getting 2 of the 3 rather than.
It's probably a smarter way to go about it instead of trying to go for an A goal that's way above, which is pretty much what I do every race, and then
I think from a mental point of view, it's like, rather than saying, okay, well, here's my A goal that I'm going to go for, and then suddenly something goes wrong, something goes wrong within the first few hours, and you're like, I'm not getting that, and then you bring yourself down a level, and you're like, and it brings you down. Whereas if I come at it from the other way, it's like, okay, well, here's my goal that I'm going to hit, and then if everything's going well, I'm going to push myself to get this next one, and if everything's going absolutely perfect, then let's go for this one. But for Glasgow Edinburgh, it was like, first and foremost, let's just finish, and then the way GB Ultras do the events is the top 100 get a gold, 100 to 200 get silver, and then anybody after that gets a bronze. And I think I had just looked at the entry list, not realising that a bunch of people wouldn't turn up on the day, but I'd looked at the entry list, and there was something like 400 people in there. So I was like, look, if I can come in the top half and get a silver medal, that would just blow my mind. And then the final goal was sub 12 hours. And I don't know where I'd kind of plucked that figure out of thin air, because I'd looked at my time running to Linlithgow, and I was like 7 hours for that. And then you're trying to work out, well, how long is it going to take me to run another 20 miles on top of that? So
it's always interesting trying to work out a time goal for ultras of this length.
Sorry, is that how long it takes to run to Linlithgow from Glasgow? 7 hours. 7 hours. Is that right? Wow, I probably will,
just
but
I
didn't realise it was that far. I didn't realise it was that
40 odd miles.
Wow.
Is it not 36 miles or something like that?
I just hadn't considered it, because obviously I know how far Linlithgow is, because I've cycled that from my house. And like I live at Saughton Park. I live at the finish line, so I know exactly how far Linlithgow is on the bike, and I've ran a lot of it as well. But I never realised that that's how long I've got to be running for before I hit there.
On the way.
Wow.
So if you're doing recce runs on it, you can run from the start line to the Falkirk Wheels pretty much about 24 miles, and there's taps there. Yeah. So if you're looking to fill your water back up,
that's the furthest cycle I've done like ever, is for the house to Falkirk Wheel. So I kind of know that. I know I can't what's coming for there, but I think I would need to be coming to Glasgow and doing
a few
the other side of things.
Asking about it. It's a really easy one to go out and recce, because you've got the train line that runs all the way along it. So at any point you can bail, jump on the train, and you're going either way to Glasgow or Edinburgh from that point. But yeah, no, that was. I mean, managed to hit all 3 goals, albeit that my sub 12, I hit it by 4 seconds.
Was that sprint finish?
Sprint is. It depends on your point of view, but yeah, I think that was the hardest.
Sprint power walk.
At least you've got the track. At least you've got the track.
My daughter there, she was like 2 at the time, and she's trying to run with me, and I'm just trying to pick her up and run at the same time. But
stay there. I need sub 12
on the high jump.
See the GB Ultra guys, they're no stupid, because by doing that top 100, then next 100, then everybody else, almost
they know what they're doing.
If you don't want to compete and you've no interest in competing, when you're in there, it just clicks in and you just start doing it. Because I remember when I was running it last year, I wanted top 100, I actually just wanted to finish it because I was doing it for charity. Inside, I wanted top 100, and I was getting messages for everybody, and my phone was going at RAFO, and people were saying you're like trying to phone me to tell me like get a move on and hurry up, you're getting caught and blah blah. And I was just totally oblivious, But it brings out this kind of this inner race way, whether it's just you or
and on Glasgow Edinburgh,
whoever.
I came on and talk about it last weekend, but Glasgow Edinburgh at one point, I'm looking at the tracker when I was at RAFO and I was like 180 something. And I'm physically counting the guys in the checkpoint, and I'm like, I need to get a shift on here because if I leave and these guys will take me, so in my head I'm like, right, the goal's there. I just need to go and get this done. What I didn't realise was people had dropped out and their GPS trackers had been transported to the finish line, so they had to rejig, like they rejig the results once everybody's properly finished.
I realise the trackers at GTE aren't the best anyway. The amount of bridges you go over, the signal bounces. So the amount of times I had the support on that, and it would bounce from where I was back to the last checkpoint because it would lose it. So I'd go from like 60th to 100 something. Then they panicked, and then we finally came in. But I ran that with Gary Dempsey. It's crazy, obviously saying that we both ran Stirling 2019. We both ran GTE 2022. I ran with Gary Dempsey, or Gary_runs, for the last 30 miles of that GTE. Also with, I think, Mel Mouse at Run the Blades. She finished 10 places above me in 2019 and the same again last year when we all ran it because I had a knee injury. It's crazy, man. The people that talk to now that have actually been in the same events throughout these last few years.
Was that the one I beat you as well, Mike?
Oh, you shut the fuck up.
So obviously you done GTE and then is Run the Blades 2023 your next one after that then?
I hadn't learned my lesson from Edinburgh 2017 when I took my mate's bib. So I actually inspired one of my mates he's done multiple full Ironmans, but he seen me doing Glasgow Edinburgh and he was like, right, that looks amazing, let's get myself an ultra marathon. And he entered the Tweed Valley 65k. And I'd went down and I'd kind of done a recce run over Minchmoor, so like a 30-mile run with him. But I was just going to leave him to it. And then, like literally a couple of days beforehand, he phoned me up and he said, I've got COVID, do you want my bib? So I went down and ran that one. And for that was an eye opener to me because it was something like 5,000 foot elevation when you go up over through Cardrona Forest and then up over Minchmoor, and then you come back and you finish up in Glentress. And it absolutely killed me. If I go back to Strava, I think that's still the run that's got the most kind of effort in it. But it opened my eyes to let me realise that no, wait a minute, I can actually hills scared me, and up until the start of this year, they still scared me. But it was like I can actually do this. I'm not going to be the fastest, but I can get up and over these hills. So that was 2022, and then in 2023, the guys at Run the Blades asked if I'd be an ambassador for them. Now, like I said, I'd always been a solo runner. Like I just turned up, done my races, and went home. But they then started kind of pushing me on a different Instagram profile that was friends and family. But they were kind of pushing me, and they asked me if I would come along and run all three of the events in one weekend. So do the 10k on the Friday night, the 50k on the Saturday, then come back and do the 21k on the Sunday morning. Distance wise, it was I knew I could go out and run 81k if you'd asked me to do that. I knew I had that in my legs, but it was more could I do the 50k and then go back out the next morning and do that 21k.
I remember seeing you. I didn't actually realise it was you. Did I miss that you just said you didn't have the account set up by then?
So it was just Stevie McKenna. So that was one. That's still got that account.
Am I right saying that Mel done the three of them?
Until that weekend. But that was the first event where I actually started making some running friends online. Mel was there, Nicky Sheridan, started following me off the back of that. And then, crazily enough, I ended up running a good section of that with Davey Roberts on the day.
Mike, was that the first time we actually met each other in real life as well?
I think so.
I think it was, because that was my first ultra as well, and that's the first time I met Davey. I think Nicky as well, probably the first time I actually met
Kaylee was there.
Kaylee. That was good though. I enjoyed it. But I do remember seeing you
that, and then off the back of that, I ended up running Glen Ogle last November, and again ran that with Davey.
We did that as well.
I remember at the start, Davey getting photos with loads of people, and that Davey was kind of the only person I knew there. So I went over, said hello to them. Now looking back at the photos that he was taking, it's everybody that I know. But at the time, I was just like, I was still a kind of solo runner. I wasn't really getting involved in things. But yeah.
I love Glen Ogle. I DNF'd there, but I think if dates work, I would go back and get it done. It's one that's been
for me. I'd kind of always seen people in the past, and it was like for me the three kind of classic Scottish ultras were Glen Ogle, the Fling, and the Devil, and then obviously you've got the full West Highland Way. But those three I'd always looked at and thought, I can't do that elevation. Like distance wise, maybe, but when you're throwing in thousands of foot of elevation, it's like that's not for me. Now it's like, no, I need to give these a crack.
Yeah, elevation changes the game. Like the miles is one thing, but when you do start throwing in verticality, it changes it massively.
I think that's one thing I don't tend to look at. I've said this to Mike. Mike tries to tell me stuff about elevation. I'm like, I literally have no idea what that means. Like, is that good or bad? And it's I just kind of go, that looks sound. I'll do that race, but I don't think I've done one with a high elevation.
I think we go on about elevation like you road runners go on about your pace per mile kind of thing.
It's like I don't know what Glen Ogle is. I don't know what Glen Ogle is, if that's like a lot of elevation or not.
So how far?
Course, but this is where.
But you've been up the Pentlands. You've been up the Pentlands enough and stuff as well. And I mean,
even though that, mate, I couldn't tell you what I run in the Pentlands. But if I go do 20k or 25k, I couldn't tell you what the elevation is, good or bad either. I just know that I need to go and climb hills. I mean, it's meaning more so for what I do.
To be fair, that isn't even always a bad way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's easy to head case if you just look at the numbers of hill. Just go climb them. Just do it.
So how did you get on with all the races then? What was it? It was the 10k.
So the 10k on the Friday
night,
I paced one of my mates. He was wanting to go. I think his previous PB on it was like 1:15. So we were trying to get him close, get him down to like 1:04, 1:05. So we got him in that kind of in that region, and then the next day went out to do the 50. I think I got about 16, 17 miles into it, and then felt that I had been running the night before. But still got round. I mean, I wasn't great. I think it was closer to about 5:45, 5:50. So not as fast as I was a few years ago. And then the 21k the next day was just a celebration. That was just my mate. A couple of mates came along to run it, and I had one of my good mates. And for weeks beforehand, he's like, "Oh, it's fine. Like, if you want me to carry anything, I'll take stuff out your pack. I'll do this, I'll do that." And then for the boys that have ran it, we get to that hill at the end. So there's probably about 100-foot climb, 2k from the finish maybe. And me and one of my other mates, we just power straight up it. And my mate Davey, that was giving it all this beforehand, look over my shoulder and he's stopping, and I'm like, "You okay?" And he's like, "I'm just taking in the view here." I ended up finishing, getting my medal, and then turning around and running back down the course to find him half a mile down the course and then bring him back in.
I didn't think that hill was actually that bad. I think
there's
one
the
that's
50k,
in the middle of the course that's
so
worse.
There's one coming into checkpoint 2, and it's not so much that the hill, it's a hill that just keeps going up and going up. What you don't realise is when you actually look at the course profile, you're running uphill for like 2.5 miles, and then it suddenly whips up at the end of it.
Now I like Run the Blaze though. Is it Lee, the guy that organises it? He's a great guy as well. Anytime I spoke to him, and even that was my first ultra, and I just remember going past in the car constantly, just making sure everybody's fine, because obviously you can't get lost really, because it's very well signposted. But if you were ever in bother, it'd be easy for somebody for you to be missed. But he was brilliant. I must have seen him about 10, 15
I've got
times.
time for them,
Just
and
driving
I
them
always
out
make
the
sure that I volunteer in Marshall on that weekend. So normally I'll go along and volunteer in Marshall on the Friday night for the 10K, and then do one of the events on either the Saturday or the Sunday. I'm not actually doing any of them this year, so I'm just going to see how much time I can spend helping out with them.
I would always say to anybody that asks about a first
It
ultra,
was a
I would
gateway
always
for
point
me.
them to
It
run
was
the parade.
literally my gateway ultra, because there's enough hills in there to give you an idea of what you're going to get, but it's nice and safe. It's, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but like you said, if something goes wrong, somebody's there like that for you.
There's a wee bit different mix of terrain as well, in terms of like loose gravel, loose rocks, like just kind of paved roads and stuff like that. So it's good in that respect if you are inexperienced with the ultras and you just want to actually test the distance. Like if you have been a marathon runner and you want to see if you can do that extra bit of mileage, I would always say that you should go and do that one. Obviously,
Blades was my first ultra in 2019. It's horrendous.
It was good. It was good. In terms of anything further from that, then Stevie, what did you move on to
That,
after
it brings us really down to this year, and I said before, I was always a kind of solo runner, and I was fed up looking at Strava on a Friday night or a Saturday morning and suddenly seeing that half my feed had been off doing an event, and like an event that looked, some sort of niche event that looked good, like the Cross Border 10K, or something like Scurry around Cabot Island, where you're just like, that looks fun. So I thought I'm going to try and be more of a social runner. And I kept on seeing the Press Play Run Club popping up in my feed, people going along to it. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go in and see what happens. And it's genuinely one of the best decisions I've made this year, just going along and being part of the group and running with the group. I found myself on some of those runs going along at paces that I just wouldn't do myself.
I think press play it's certainly for everyone. Obviously, that's what the intention of it. It's for everyone, but it actually is for everyone. You see people, that are happily call themselves slower runners, part at the back, and then you've got the faster people, like you look at Ryan, Les, Alison pushing each other on this year. It's 100% probably the since I've started anyway within the running community, it's the number one thing for me that's stuck out. In terms of bringing people together, and it is making one of the best communities around, in terms of even friendships. It's not even just a community, by the way, it's friendships. It's actually that's great for people. But if we go on to, is there anything else that you want to cover then, Stevie, within that, before we go into your and Jimmy's soiree last week?
All I wanted to do, obviously, I wanted to be more social, but then I wanted a challenge for this year. I wanted something to step me out of my comfort zone. The flying is on my wish list. I said that earlier on. That's one of the ones I consider a classic, and I knew it was actually a boy that I ended up. You say that we were talking about how we've all ran events without realising that who we were at the time. So when I done Glasgow Edinburgh, there was a boy running with a Motherwell Athletics top on, and it turns out he stays 500 metres that way. So we've kept in touch. We take the dogs out for walks and things like that. So he was entering the fling this year, and I was like, right, that sounds great. I'm going to get my name down for that. And I was that close to booking it, but I was like, something's bugging me here. And just before I went to ask my other half if I could book it or not, I realised it's my son's first birthday, so there was no danger that I was doing that this year. But yeah, at that point, the next thing that came up on my radar was the GB Ultra Scotland 50.
I just want to actually touch on one wee thing before we go into the Ultra 50. It was your 5K PB the week before it. Can you talk me through what happened there, the thought behind it,
Smart.
and the execution?
No, it was absolute stupidity on the other half. Absolute stupidity. I've been tapering for weeks. I mean, my thought behind it was, go down to Strathclyde Park. I stay like 4 miles from the park, and my gym's just over the back of it. So I thought, I'll go down. It's the week after the Edinburgh Marathon, or 2 weeks after the Edinburgh Marathon. But either way, I knew that there would be folk there. You know, I knew Alison and Lynn, Susan, Steph, Stuart. They would all be there. They'd all either done, you know, the relay, the half, or the full. I know Susan Swarbrick had just done her first half marathon, so I was wanting to go down and just congratulate her. So I thought, I'll go down to the gym. I'll just do a wee 3 mile warm up. That takes me, and I had 6 miles to run that day. Wee 3 mile warm up, and then I'll just go for just easy miles, chatty run with some of them. So that was genuinely hand on heart. That was what I was going to do. And then I turned up and realised it was Pacer week, and I was like, not just, you know, find the kind of like 26, 27 minute pacer, stick with them, that's fine. So I went into the pack where that was, and then 3, 2, 1, go, and I just got swept up in the pack mentality of it. And before I knew it, like, I went through the first kilometre and I passed the 25 minute, the 24 minute, the 23 minute pacer, and I'm hanging on the back of the 22 minutes. And at that point, I'm like, this is stupid. Just let it go. Let it go.
It's one of the courses that once you've committed, because everybody else around about you is obviously going at the same pace, and like you're running past people, and everybody's giving you the bit.
I was hanging,
like, Stevie,
as you came around the bottom of Strathclyde Park, I was off the back of the 22 group, and I'm just like, just let them go. But then in my head, I'm like, my PB's about, I think it was 22, 21 or something like that, and I was like, let's just see what happens. And came round, and then by the time you come back round the loop of Strathclyde Park and get back onto the finishing straight, at that point, you know, the 22 minute pacer shouting at you, he's just like, don't wait for me, just go. And a couple of folks set off, and I was like, well, let's just kick and see what happens. And I was absolutely buzzing. But the thing was, before I even got there, I'd recorded an Instagram update, a story, and I was like, and I finished it saying, I am not racing today. This is not what I'm here for. And I think that's the biggest lie anybody's ever told themselves when they go to any event.
So how long did the buzz last for, and then the realisation of?
I was buzzing for a good hour, 2 hours afterwards, and then I was just like, why did you do that? Because see if I tweet something, whenever I get injured running, it's never on my slow runs. It's always when I push the pace, and you know, that's the first training block I've come through where I've not tweaked anything on a tempo session. So yeah, it was stupidity, but also, like you say, I was just buzzing about it afterwards. So it's nice.
That's the way I would look at it.
It's what everybody says. You do the long slow runs, and then the fast ones come naturally. And that was, you know, that's a 5k PB I've hit in this block, a 10k PB, and a marathon PB, all as a result of just doing my long slow runs. So
the thing is as well, we can't always be built like they two. Like what I think you said you were 92 kilo at the start of the race. I'm 88 kilo. So like I'm no wee laddie either. And it's good to see the larger boys, not that we're large, but medium sized, I would say. Put one out. Aye, an XP 5k PB, 22 minutes odds. Brilliant. I'm here for that. I'm absolutely here for that. So next we are going to go on to last weekend's race, guys, that you had, the Ultra Scotland 50. Jimmy, do you want to lead the way on this one for me, please, mate?
Yep. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Ultra Scotland 50 is actually a 56 mile race. It's advertised as 50 miles, but it's actually 56 from St John's Town in Dalry, with 2,447 metres elevation. However, it turns in slightly more at that. My watch was 3,146. I think Stevie's was, what was yours, Stevie?
I was just under that. I was just like a shade over.
So and it runs across the Southern Upland Way, which is it's quite a brutal course. We'll get into that in a bit more detail as we kind of digest the race and the day's events. Probably start at the very start at logistics. So for me, it was an early rise, 2 a.m. in the morning. I had to get up. I was fortunate enough that my sister actually was coming to pick me up. Without her, I wasn't actually even going to do the race. I'd put my ticket up for someone to take it over because it just seemed like a bit of a nightmare. But she actually offered and saved the day, so she got up at 2:00. So we left Falkirk at 3 a.m. It was a 2-hour drive into what seems like the middle of nowhere. Got there for 5 just for reg and stuff, and absolutely exhausted. I mean, absolutely shattered. Was trying to get asleep in the car about an hour before it, trying to get my head down. I just felt absolutely done in because the night before.
I was the same as you, Jimmy. It's like there's no easy way to do it. Like there's nowhere really you can stay local. If you've got a motorhome, then you can camp down there. You had the option of tents, but I just thought the idea of camping, and then not only that, but then waking up the next morning trying to put your tent away, and you find well what the midges were going to be like round about the start area.
Because
the only option I had was to get a lift down.
So I was probably too late, and I actually looked at one of the hotels, and they were wanting £200 for the night, and I was like, that is not happening.
Aye, and you're only sleeping in it for half a night.
And then I was too late to the party because GB Ultras do a bus, so you can stay in Dalry, you can run to the finish, which is in Moffat, and then they will do a bus back. But the bus back is actually, and this is the bit I couldn't quite get my head around. It was only if the numbers like allowed it or wanted it, but at no point did they say we have 30 places or 50 places. It was just all of a sudden I seen a communication saying, "Oh, the bus is full and that's it done."
There was lots of people within the GB Ultras community saying, "Oh, how do I book on the bus?" And this was like a week or two beforehand. And they're like, "Oh no, the bus is full." But even then, I think the bus was leaving at midnight to come back.
So can you?
So I mean, you do the logistics on that. You're running at 6 a.m. You're getting through there. Say even you're getting through there at the sort of time I was getting through there for your kind of 9-10 o'clock. You're then waiting for 2 hours. A bus from there back to the start line is going to be probably 2 hours, maybe.
Which could be a campsite for the night,
Yeah, and then what you're doing, you're driving home from there. So yeah, logistics wise, I found it a bit of a pain, even just for going down to recce it beforehand. So I didn't want to go into it blind. I wanted to know what I was running on.
Did they not have the option of getting a bus to the start? Like a lot of events will do buses either way.
No,
just from the front.
And the thing is, I suppose that's probably something that's inherent with running ultras, especially ones across country. Like they are remote by nature because you're starting in a small village and you're running into the hills somewhere. You're running away to like the arse end of nowhere. Like it's not like you're into a city and you're buses everywhere. It generally is remote at the best of times. But that one in particular, I found just hard. Like literally before it, I was absolutely done. Like I just felt like I was like, what am I actually doing here? Like it's just shattered.
Nah, it was an early start. I was same as you. Luckily my brother came to pick me up at 3 a.m. and drove me down, because we just couldn't figure out logistics. Even if I had drove down there and left my car there and then ran to the finish, it was still looking at a 2-hour drive to get back to the car once I'd finished. And then no matter what way you go, it was a 2-hour drive for me to get home. So I didn't really fancy that extra 4 hours once I'd finished.
I think that's one of the things with ultras, though, is the early mornings. And then when you go to these city marathons, it's a 9 or 10 o'clock start. It's pretty much a lie-in at that point. Right. But it's not as bad as the West Highland Way, 1 a.m. start, though.
Yeah.
Always be worse.
Is that what they're looking at? 1 a.m. next weekend?
But I mean, so once you were at the finish, it was easy enough because it was like family come, pick you up, blah, blah, blah. You're home at that point, so you don't have that worry. And for me, that was easy. The wife and the kids come and pick us up, and it was fine. But so, see, going into it, Stevie, what was your goals as such? I know you put them on your a couple of your feeds. So for people that never seen it,
so I put them up on this. So I went down and like I was saying there, I went down and actually recce'd the full course. So I wanted to know what was there. So first and foremost, and I kind of, when I look at everybody else talking about goals, I think I've got my goals the wrong way about, because I have a kind of, right, here's my kind of bare minimum that I want to do. So that's like my first goal, or my A goal, which was just finish. I just wanted to get to the end of it. Now, previously I'd done Glasgow to Edinburgh, so I knew I had 56 miles in my legs, but let's face it, what's the biggest hill on that? Maybe running up by the Falkirk Wheel.
Aye.
So for me, it was that next challenge of, can I do that distance, but can I also put the hills in there? And genuinely, when I signed up for it back in start of February, that wasn't unknown for me. So that was my A goal, was just to get to the finish line. Then when I went down and recce'd the full course, I kind of had to think about it, and I knew how long it took myself and my mate to run from St Johnstown to Dalry over to Van Lockhead. And yeah, we'd been messing about a bit on the way over and stopping taking photos and all the rest of it. But I had a rough idea for my time there, and then I went back down myself and ran from Van Lockhead to Moffat. So yeah, at that point I was like, if I could go sub 16, then that, I'd be over the moon with that, because I think I was like 9 and a bit hours to run the first one, and then 5 and a bit to run the next. But it's completely different when you're doing them back to back. And then the way that GB Ultra structure their events, the top 100 get a gold medal, 100 to 200 get a silver, and then anything after that is a bronze. And 2 years ago when I ran Glasgow to Edinburgh, I got a silver medal, and I thought, well, why not aim for the top 100? And that was the one goal that was kind of out of my control, because you don't know what the pack's going to be like. It could have turned up. It could have been all guys like Mike that were running that'll just off they go, and suddenly I'm the slow guy at the back. So yeah, that was my goals going into it, and it was just one of these things. I just have to see how it panned out on the day. What about yourself?
So it was weird. I think I got in my own head before this race massively, because see, before the race I was looking at like times and finishers' times and like winners' times and the likes, and a girl on Annie Walters, who she's like an absolute machine runner. She won the female category the year before in 13 hours and 30 minutes, I think it was. And I was like, if she's running in that 13 hours 30, then I'm in bother. And I remember saying to my wife, but 16 hours pick me up, probably 15 to 16 hours will probably pick me up. And I remember messaging Mike as well before at the week on the build up to it, saying, mate, this is going to be absolutely torture. I think I'm going to struggle with this. I think, you know what I mean? You look at things and you just overthink it.
I think that's the first time I've seen you or heard you actually have those doubts, because obviously we stood on the start line to the Fling, and the Fling's a big race. It's 53 miles with 7,000 feet and some tough trails, but we were both chill running that. Like, that was fine. But I think that's the first time I've seen you have any doubts about your ability to do something like this. Like, you'll be fine. Just run it.
I think it's easy to get in your head, but because I heard you guys on the previous podcast talking about Jimmy going to do it, and Jason, or both of you were mentioning that I was doing it as well, and you were like, oh, Stevie's been smashing his training, he's going to breeze through this. But the reality is, when you're at the start line and you're looking at 50, 56, 57, however long it turns out to be, if you're on your feet for 13, 14, 15 hours, that's a long time that anything can happen. And it's just that, that you can do as much training as you want, but it's still sometimes in the back of your mind of the what ifs. What if something goes wrong?
I think that's the great thing with ultras, though. It doesn't matter how good your training is, or even if you've done that event before, there's never a given at any point that you're going to do it this time. Like, you can't get complacent, ever.
So like in that, I always say to folk, I just want to finish it. I'll finish it. But I know inside that isn't me. I want that gold medal, eh? I do not want anything else. I want the gold medal, eh? So ultimately, when it started, that's what I was after.
Well, I'd kind of went in with that as being my ultimate stretch goal, and that was there for weeks and weeks and weeks as my ultimate stretch goal. And then I heard you the week before giving it, I'm going for gold and nothing else. And then suddenly I'm like, I'm going to have to pull one out the bag here now.
But I don't know. But they're no daft by doing that though, eh? Putting that in.
No, they know exactly what they're doing, and especially for somebody like me. So that's 2 GB Ultra events I've done, and both of them I've kind of been round about the cusp of being one colour or another colour medal, and it just introduces that whole new element to it, where you're not just there making up the numbers at the back of the pack, you're racing the folk round about you, and it's
because what it actually does,
it's nice.
Like you said there, like people think the race is like for first, second, third, but you could be sitting 102nd, and you've got a race on your hands to get if you want that gold. And ultimately, in the end, it just brings out the best in you, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. And I think having a look at the GB Ultras community since the race, the boy that finished in 100th place, he put a cracking post on there, making no apologies about the fact that he was absolutely tanking down into Moffat to get that last gold medal, because he knew where he was, because everybody's got a GPS tracker. The apps, not the app, the website's there, so you can see where you are. Friends and family can see where you are, so if you're sitting in 101th place and somebody is half a mile down the road, you're going to go and try and chase them down.
I think even if you're not that way orientated to kind of actually want to race, obviously a lot of people do ultras for the experience and stuff, but it's very easy to get into your own head. So it's also a very good tool just to keep you pushing as well. Like, even if it's not about the positions, because it's still like 100th, but it's just a tool that you can use right there to keep going, when otherwise, I think we've all had those experiences at that distance that it's so easy for your head to start to get lost at that point.
Definitely.
No, 100%.
So the route, what did we make of the route? The way I described it on my Instagram was, I've never witnessed a race that was equal parts horrible as it was absolutely amazing, which to me is kind of summed up the whole, like every part of it was just, at some point you hated it, you thought this is absolutely terrible, but then you'd turn around and catch a view, or you'd turn around and catch like a part of it and thought this is absolutely amazing, and it's ultimately, you think to yourself, that's why you run these things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I'd been down and been over the whole course in two separate training runs. So I knew what the conditions were going to be like, but I didn't know what the views were going to be like, because when I'd been down, we were literally up in the clouds. But yeah, some of the views from Brainback and over at the reservoir, when you climb up the back of the dam, you can just see for miles. It's just stunning. But I guess the flip side of that is there's also the kind of landmarks you can see. So you can see the standing arch, and you can see that from a long distance away. And I don't know if it was easier not seeing where that was in the cloud and just hiking up the hill to it, as opposed to being able to see it from miles away and thinking, oh, for goodness sake, we're going up there. And the same with the golf ball on the top of Lother Hill, you can see that from easily 10, 15 miles away.
So for anybody that doesn't kind of know, the standing arch basically on top of, like, it's the first big hill you hit. It's like 572 meters elevation, and at the top of it there's this gigantic arch, which would be amazing to stop and get a photo in, and because you'd have this arch with all the scenery behind you and everything like that, and people I was stopped to get it, and I just looked at them, I was like, no, I'm off skiing. I was like, I'm off, and I just kept going. I didn't stop at all. I was like,
I was the same. I've got a photo in that arch with just cloud behind me from back in April, but on race day it was like through the gate, route goes to the left hand side, off we go.
So just for anybody that's never done it, the race basically starts in Dalry. You run 30 meters out of this little field, and then it's basically straight up what's like 292 meter straight up elevation hill, and that's where it all kind of begins. And I think it's at the top of that hill that's where me and you met, Stevie, wasn't it? Literally right at the top.
Aye. So you come up through the town, off the town, and then you're literally into fields. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. For all that it's the Southern Upland Way, there's sections of forestry track, but the majority of it, certainly in the first half of the course, was just going through fields with marker poles that you were following. Obviously, I was a bit further back in the pack, so by that point I've had 60, 70 people going in front of me, so at that point there's a definite trail. But yeah, it was. I think if people are thinking trail runs like even the West Highland Way, where it's a proper defined track, yeah, that's not what the Southern Upland Way was.
For the majority of that whole race, it was boggy. It was like wiry grass. There wasn't a well defined track. It was just marshy. It was heavy underfoot. Every time you were running, you could just feel the energy being sapped out your legs as the ground kind of sponged under you. And then add into that,
Aye. I was going to say you could almost see that spongy grass that was there, and it was always the risk of, do you put your foot on that? Because I don't know about you, but I've seen a couple of people disappear up to their knees, and it was after the first mile, I was just like, no, if there's that spongy grass that folk are running over, I'm going to see if there's
I
a way
was
to
one
go
of
around
them.
it, because
Within about, I think, 4 miles, I was close to losing my shoe. At the end, I showed Sarah I just had this big ring round the underside of my knee where I had poles, I poked them in, I just stood in it, and my foot just went, and I managed to get the other one back out and away, but I think I just kind of murmured to myself, something like, oh, here we fucking go, or something like that, and that just continued to go because it was just hellish.
Aye. No, certainly the second half of the course I had my poles out for the majority of it, so I was starting to kind of prod at bits before I put weight on them. But that first, pretty much until we got to the main climb up Benbrack, probably about 10 miles in, I didn't really have my poles out to that point. But then as soon as we hit that, poles were out, and
so I've got a wee
hiking
list
time.
of some. So it says it's 2,447 meters elevation. My watch clocked 3,146. Just a couple of wee things I noted down. Like you've got Manquo Hill, 410 metres. Then straight after that, you're up to Ben Brack at 572. And then you drop back down, that's at 12 miles. And at 14 miles, you're back up to 556. And then you come down, and then at 35 miles, you're straight up to 711. And then in the space of about maybe 2 miles, you're straight back down again. I mean, it was absolutely crazy and killer on the legs.
Aye, I think Lother Hill's always billed as the kind of the highest point on it, but I found that was okay because you were coming out a checkpoint. You know, you had maybe 5-10 minutes to sort yourself out, you fuel up, and then you're going up that's fine. Over the back, there was a kind of a slight drop down, and then you're back up onto a ridge. But then out of nowhere on the other side of that, it must have been about 100 metres vertical, and it felt like you were going straight down and then straight back up the other side. And you know it was steep when you were starting to get down the trail, and there's little switchbacks on the trail to get down. And I think that caught out a few folk that didn't realise that they were.
You know why you also knew that was a hard section? Because if you remember, straight after that, you kind of jog a bit, and then you come to the road, and then there's a checkpoint.
Aye, and the checkpoint was only like 6 miles or something.
And that
since the last
checkpoint
one
was laden with people when I went there, just all sat on seats or sat on the floor, who had obviously tanked that hill and then tanked down it, and their legs were absolutely in bits. And I think that's where I just grabbed stuff quickly like that because I seen all them, that same thing. Seen all them because I hadn't a clue what position I was in, and just grabbed some stuff, and that was me. I was off ski. I wasn't hanging about because I was.
Yeah, at that point, I'd been getting updates from friends, so I knew I was sitting about. It was weird. As I came out of One Lock Head, I was sitting about 78th or something like that, and I was fine going up the hills. But by that point, my quads were shot, and I was getting absolutely destroyed coming down the other side of the hills. And like, I was slow, but I was getting destroyed by people just passing me left, right, and centre. But again, you never know because they've got the 50 and the 100 running at once. You never know who's doing what event. And I would speak to some people thinking, oh, they must be doing the 50 with me, and no, that was them doing the 100. So you couldn't judge a book by its cover either. But as I got to that checkpoint 4, the one you were talking about, I was there. I had to sort a blister on my heel, and I mind getting a message from one of my mates saying the boy in 100 is just about to come into that checkpoint. So for me, that was go time. It was grab what I need, and then I think it was about a 3-4 mile run on relatively smooth forest tracks to get over to the reservoir, and that was my opportunity just to try and put some distance there because I knew after that it was a decent climb up which would be fine on, but then it was the other side to get back down to Moffat that I was worried about.
So overall, how? Sorry, Mike, what were you saying?
He's on mute.
You're on mute, mate.
Yeah, technology is fantastic. But no, it's like you're saying there about the dealing with the blister on your foot. Obviously, I know people that did the 100 spoke about their feet getting absolutely trashed. Did you have any foot issues aside from that, going through them fields and losing your shoes?
Yeah, so I was going into it carrying a kind of wee niggle in my heel, so it'd been there with training. You know, I knew that the only way to resolve it is not run on it. It feels absolutely amazing now because I've not been running for a while. But yeah, that was just. I don't know about you, Jimmy, but I found some sections, especially that big kind of 18-mile section between checkpoint 1 and over to checkpoint 2 at Sanker. There was about 3-4 miles of trails that just basically tracked up the side of a hill, so you were right, you were almost going in a diagonal line, get from the bottom up to the top, and it was all off
Your
camber.
ankles
So
were
when I'm
killing you.
planting my left heel, which well, it was the base of my heel was killing me because it kept on slipping. But no, aside from that, Mike, my feet came through it relatively okay, and it was interesting speaking to people because one of the things that I wanted to do was find people that were doing the 100 and chat to them, because I mean I've read that the biggest difference between doing a 50 and doing 100 is being able to look after your feet and maintain your feet for the entire thing. You know, if you're doing the sort of miles and the training for a 50, there's not that much of a step up, relatively speaking, to get to 100. But if you don't look after your feet and they get destroyed, then
Yeah,
that's going to
the
keep
feet are
you.
huge. Do you do anything to look after your feet? Either tape them up, Vaseline, Body Glide,
I
or do you wear toe socks or just normal?
Pedicures.
So I toe socks. Toe socks is that's what I go
Yeah,
for.
that's what I use.
I use toe socks, and it's just I used to get blisters on the inside and the outside of my little toe all the time, and then moved over to toe socks. That was a game changer for me. But again, speaking to people, they were talking about like nappy rash cream and things like that, putting like a waterproof barrier on your feet. Um, I don't know about you, Jimmy, but I
No,
can't think of a way that
I
you'd be able to keep your feet
I
dry
just
doing that
I
race.
literally just wear toe socks and tape the inside arch of my foot, and tape the two toes next to my big toe on both feet, and I do that all the time now. And that's
Have none of you tried these waterproof socks, or are they not still? Are they not going to manage this kind of terrain and environment either?
I don't know
no,
about
I
that.
don't
I
know.
mean, your feet are going to get soaking, but
I
it's whether you're going to sweat so much with that one. I mean, for me, I know for a fact that would just make my toes rub together inside that waterproof sock, and that
yeah.
then leads to all the problems that
Used
people used to
waterproof
get.
socks on trails and up the hills, and they are decent. But yeah, I think if you're putting in effort, you'll have that. But also, if you're going through bogs, if the water goes above that sock line, they're still going to get flooded. But the issue then is the water won't come out if water gets in. So they can be really useful, but I don't know for something like this unless it's dire. Like
So was
Yeah, but I think I spoke to some people that had like a chain where they were meeting people at checkpoint 2, which was what 26, 24 miles in maybe, but close to a marathon. But they were meeting folk there to then change their socks and change their shoes at that checkpoint to then go on. But I mean, I knew fine well, Jimmy, that once we hit that field at the top of the very first climb through St Johnstown to Dalry, at that point you've either got two options. Your feet are either freezing cold because you've just stood in a bog, they're freezing cold and wet, or they're warm and wet because the bog was half a mile ago and your feet have warmed up a bit. But either way, you were getting wet feet.
see,
There
I
wasn't much you could do
didn't.
about it.
Also, I didn't know any of this. It was all fun and games, and then I spoke to you. I think like a mile in, and we spoke for 10 minutes, and then you were like, "James, didn't let me keep you
Yeah.
on. You go away, you go." So then we partied, and then about like I don't know, the next 5 miles after that was just like sodden, like just
Aye.
it wasn't it?
Pretty much as soon as you pass it that farm that we parted ways at that point you're just
So
yeah into the bog and there's
so
nothing you
apart
can do
from
about
the
it.
wet feet, the miserable terrain, the massive inclines, the horrible downclines, how was the rest of your race? How did you find it?
I enjoyed it. And I think this is probably the first event I've went into where I've stood at that start line and thought I've done the work here, so I'm going to get my head up. I'm going to enjoy this. You know, everybody says that no matter what race you're doing, the race is a celebration of your training. But I genuinely wanted to make it that. I wanted to take the whole experience in. Like I say, chat with anybody. I love it. I used to, like I touched on earlier on, I snowboard. I used to do a lot of snowboarding, and I love that idea of you jump on a T-bar with somebody, which is a kind of two-person lift, and off you go, and you have a random 5-minute conversation with some complete stranger until you get to the top of the mountain. And I kind of was doing that as I was running along with people. You were just, chatting away, finding out what they'd done before.
That's weird, because I've got written here in my wee notes that, so I did the fling like just a month and a bit ago, and I thought that was the most social race I'd ever ran, like people chatting to you all over the course. Whereas this race, I chatted to, I think, basically one person, and that was it. And I said, all right, to folks, and I said, how's it going? And everybody just seemed to be kind of like focused in and tunneled into what they had to do. And I didn't get much chat or any.
Running at the front you're running at the front of all these athletes. You come closer to the back where the party is. That's the problem. But no, I genuinely enjoyed the experience. I think we were fortunate with the weather. We got a couple of showers coming through, but nothing wild. It could have been so different. Had the rain properly come on for an hour or 2 hours, then that would have made it a different experience for me, because the jacket would have been on, the hood would have been up, and I think at that point I would have been in my own world. But no, I enjoyed the random chats I had with folk.
So along with obviously like foot care and stuff, fueling is a huge bit. Is there anything specific you did for fueling, or how did that go?
Well, for me, Tailwind's my kind of go-to. So I know GB Ultras are sponsored by Tailwind, but I took along my own sachets with it. And the night before, when I done my flat lay, Jimmy's messaging me, and he's like, "You do know they've got Tailwind there. You don't need to take all that, but I prefer to take my own along just so I can mix it. I know the strength of it. I had a couple of caffeine ones in there for later
I wish I had done your idea, mate. After I messaged you, I was like, they'll be all right, because Glasgow Edinburgh was strong. See, like the second station, I tried it. I was like, is there any even in this? I had basically 2 bottles of water for 18 miles or something. I was like, fuck's sake. But
I got to the first checkpoint. I was the same at the first checkpoint, and I'd used my bottle of Tailwind. So normally I'll kind of alternate Tailwind 1 hour, and then just normal water out my other flask for the next hour, and then I'll put in, what did I have with me? I had some grapefruit fuel bars. I had some the SIS energy chews, just something to eat. I had some pretzels. I had some flapjacks. And again, it's just so I've got some real food that I can alternate between. But when I got to checkpoint 1, I was like, well, I may as well take some of the Tailwind just to see how strong it's mixed. And I had the same experience as you. I felt it was just flavoured water. It wasn't really.
I was just going to ask this: is it so? This is already pre-mixed Tailwind, and what did they serve it? Did they have it in a big container? You fill up your bottle, or is it measured out, or how?
It's all pre-mixed. It's a container they've got.
You just take what you need out of it.
So I was the same at Glasgow to Edinburgh. Like, obviously, if you're doing your training and you're doing, that you're going out with a bottle of Tailwind, and you're getting that for, if you're taking that for an hour or 2 hours, you don't want to randomly.
I think that's something for me to think about then in terms of the next one, because I would be very particular, probably in terms of how much I'm taking, and I maybe not notice as well as you guys if it wasn't mixed as well, because I didn't really use it. So that's maybe something I need to think about going forward for any of my races with him.
I mean, I think it's just peace of mind. Yeah. It's just that's one thing you can control. Mm-hmm. And if you, like I say, if you're doing your training and you're used to getting X amount of calories per hour from that, and then suddenly you're getting something that even if it is mixed in, but it doesn't taste the same as what you've been training with, that's going to play in your mind, and you're going to think, "Oh, is that weaker? Is it? Am I getting what I need here?"
To touch on
stick packs are definitely amazing for that.
To touch on their checkpoints, though, like you said, Jason, you don't have to fill it up or that, mate. You just go in and you hand them your bottles, water in there, Tailwind in that, and you just stand and you help yourself with food and fill your bag or do whatever, and they fill it and come back to you. And if you even need help, they'll put it into your vest for you whilst you're grabbing food. Like, the guys can't be helpful enough, eh? They're like like unbelievable.
Aye. Yeah, like literally as soon as I get in there, and again, like Mike was saying, I had stick packs, which are the wee kind of 2 serving packs that you get from Tailwinds. So I was going into the aid stations, and straight away they're coming up and they're like, "Oh, do you want Tailwind? Do you want this? Do you want that?" And I'm like, having to explain that no, I'll mix it in, and then you can go and fill it up with water. But yeah, the volunteers at the checkpoints are absolutely brand new. Just can't give them enough credit. And looking at I recognised a few of the folk who obviously have ran other events, but they're just giving their time back to the community to do it.
I think Jimmy's having a few issues up there. If we're done with the fueling, is there anything else that any would have done differently with the fueling? I think again, Jimmy, you're having issues there. Is there anything you would do differently, Stevie?
No, I think fueling wise, I was spot on. The one thing I would do is I would remember to take my Biscoff wraps that I had made up and left out in my
Oh,
kitchen
I've
the
seen you
night
talking
before.
about these before.
That was
Kaylee,
Kaylee, the
in
Happy
fact,
Diet. Started using them. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Just something different. And I went and get my wee mini wraps, made them all up,
they
left them
would feel like a
sitting.
proper wee treat if you have them at the
It
right
is
time.
well that is it's just that wee treat of you've got them in your bag that you can lift them whenever you want. But yeah, that was really the only thing I would do different. I didn't really bonk at any point. I didn't run out. I got to the end of the race and I still had a spare energy chew left, which I'd taken with me just in case. But yeah, no, I think
I think I need to get in the mindset and actually take on the advice that obviously the amount of food that's available at these checkpoints, because I'm quite bad for carrying a lot. I remember
yeah,
running the Blades, I had 6 or 7 full bags, rather than thinking, I just have a few bits and bobs within the bag and then carry them between the checkpoints. I was sitting trying to stuff my face at every single checkpoint, because it was at that point I didn't know what to carry anything. Now I realise, obviously, going to one of these that it's going to have all this food. I think there's still a bit of trust in the fact that I'm going to be able to pick up everything that I need there, but obviously I need to carry anything I want. So I'll need to kind of dial that in closer
yeah.
to
But I
closer to
think
time.
you'll find with Glasgow to Edinburgh that once you get to that first checkpoint, that is what you will see replicated at all the other checkpoints. And again, I posted a video from one of the checkpoints the other weekend there, and they've got everything from pretzels, chocolate. They've got all different types of fruit. They've got like very
Sandwiches.
sweets, just sandwiches, salted potatoes. There's anything there you want. So you might not be training with that, but like I found they had these wee like pretzel peanut butter things that were they were just amazing. So that was for me, that was my kind of reward of get to the checkpoint, get your tailwind and all that filled up, but whilst you're there, have some of them, and then you're good to go.
That's my kind of always my one wee concern is the fueling for it. Next thing I want to kind of pick up with is I've seen these portraits and the pictures that you guys got. I think Jimmy had said there was a healthy stack of photos that were free that were given, but especially these portraits. That looked like an amazing touch for me. To come away with from a race.
Yeah, oh no, it was amazing. So they've got a photographer called Dan Bentley, and he's been going around all the GB Ultra events this year. And what you do, you literally cross the finish line, and Dan is there set up in a marquee beside you. So you finish, you get to see your family, but then when all that emotion's still there, literally within minutes of finishing, he's taking you over and taking a portrait of you. And the fact it's black and white, it just
The fact that
shows you that
I
grit and
I was just going to say
determination.
that the fact that he's taking it that quick as well, you aren't getting the chance to actually, freshen up and kind of probably
I know
get your feel
it's
there.
just that raw
It's a
emotion.
snapshot of actually how you're feeling at that exact
Yeah,
time, and
yeah,
probably the tiredness on your face, but the elation of finishing and
yeah.
how proud you probably are, and if you've had your family there and stuff like that, and then you've got
Yeah.
the gold
That's
medal.
it. Like, when Dan's taking the photo, the family are literally
Yeah.
behind him. So your friends are, and anybody that came to see you is behind them. So you're just absolutely beaming. So
Yeah, I've
yeah, no,
seen a lot of American events do this, especially the big ones. But I think it's the first time I've seen really a UK event have the portraits like this.
Also, is this
no,
not a thing that usually happens at the GB? This is the first time this has really happened.
This is the first year that I've been aware of them doing it. And I only became aware of it just other people that I follow on social media that have maybe done, like Chester 100 or the Chester 50 beforehand, or even the new Sky one that they done a few weeks ago. And yeah, like my Strava feed's just full of people that have done it, and now suddenly they've got this black and white photo as their portrait. I think it's a nice touch. It's a nice touch.
Anybody that's listening, you'll see the thumbnail on YouTube or on the actual graphic, the image on the Spotify or Apple Podcasts will be the portrait of Stevie and Jimmy, so you'll know what we're talking about if you've not already seen it on their Instagram. The next thing we're going to touch on was kind of the overall GB experience, the value for money, how slick and efficient it was. What was your opinions on that, Stevie? I know you've spoke highly of it before. Just if you can kind of
I mean, I genuinely think they set the bar for ultra events in the UK just now. It's what was that, 90, about either 90 or £100 for that event. I can't remember off the top of my head, but when you've got that, you've got the organisation that goes into the amount of volunteers they have, like the actual registration. You rock up and you're rocking up to a wee random village in Scotland at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It's all signposted. There's loads of people there. It's just really, really well done. And then when you're out on the course, I don't know about yourself, Jimmy, but the amount of times you would come around the corner and the race director or one of the assistant race directors is just randomly standing there. And I'm talking like the middle of nowhere. There's some bits where you're like, okay, right, cool, your van's parked around the corner, your truck's around there. But there was other bits where it's like, you've hiked for a long time to get up here. And they were there just, how you doing, checking in with you. It was,
I
yeah,
think
it's
they
just
have the
amazing.
habit of going to the next checkpoint and then they'll hike back to catch everybody. But yeah, they care. They really give a shit. And I think that's very obvious from the events that I've seen and done.
Jimmy, we're still having bother hearing you, mate. I think if we just finish over on the ultra experience part, if you've obviously covered that, Stevie, in terms of how well it is, I think Jimmy had wanted to give a shout out to Michelle Young and Running.low for smashing 100 miler. Mike, have you got any knowledge of what they smashed out on the 100 miler?
I don't. It was, I think, maybe around 30 hours or so, but no, they got it done. My mate Andy, who I've been up Munros with, he had to DNF around 78 miles in. But he wasn't able to train for 2 months because of shin splints and everything else, but still gave it an amazing go on the day. So that's some shift where.
What's the case with the 100 mile? Is it done over one complete run, or how does that work?
Yes, single stage. So the 100 miler starts at the same place as the 50. It just goes on, I believe.
Yeah, so when we get to the finish line at 56 miles at Moffat, that's checkpoint 5 for them. And the guys there are then probably transitioning into their kit for running through the night. So when I got there, they're changing their shoes, changing their socks, they're getting warm kit
these
on.
People nap or anything? Do they have like tactical naps? Or
you can do.
You can. I was speaking, so I was actually fortunate enough to run with Michelle for maybe about a mile, and then we hit the climb up Benbrack, and again I was just like, on you go. But speaking to Michelle, she was planning on just going for it. When they get to 56 miles, they can pick up a pacer, somebody to run with them. Speaking to other people, some people were planning on having a little nap when they got to Moffat, and then cracking on from there. But
I don't know if it's the same in the 100, but I know the race across Scotland, there's some of the checkpoints, they actually have sections set up with kind of camp beds within various buildings that you can have quick naps that's prepared for you.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a couple of photos of people sleeping in the corners of checkpoints.
That's dedication. Jimmy's just advised me that there were 8 female finishers and 2 of them were obviously two of the 8. So fair play to them for cracking that out. I think that's a ridiculous achievement, running 100 miler. So something I would stay away from personally, but each their own. each to their own. What was the day after like for you, Stevie, in terms of your recovery? Even I'd say to the guys in our chat, see if I do even a 50k, my sleep after it, it's just my brain doesn't stop firing and I just can't get a rest. The guys seem to say that they sleep fine, but I don't know how you get on with that.
So I would say I sleep fine, but my other half would tell you that I was jumping and jittering all through the night, and I'm probably randomly dreaming about catching my toes and planting my poles to save myself going over in my arse. But yeah, no, it was okay. The hard bit the next day was chasing my 1-year-old about and trying to pick him up off the floor when he was causing carnage. It took me probably the best part of the day just to get mobile enough, just to not be kind of walking about with a limp. But like what I like to do after, even if it's just a big long run, I like to get out the next day, and even if it's just 3-4 miles, just get the legs turning, get the lactic acid going out of them. So yeah, I think about 7 o'clock on Sunday night, I went down to Strathclyde Park and just went for 4 miles, just nice and gentle, perfectly flat, tarmac route, the absolute opposite of what I'd been running on the day before. And I just done that for probably the slowest 4 miles I've done in a long time down there, but it was nice just to get my legs spinning. And
I find
yeah.
usually the day after it's my feet as such. I know we touched on it earlier on. Sometimes my feet just wouldn't even allow me to put my socks on or anything like that. Never mind get my legs turning over. I'm usually a couple of days before I do anything.
It wasn't so much my feet. My feet were okay. I mean, I'm going to say they were okay. They were sore,
Aye.
but it was my arms and my shoulders. See, just from using poles all day long, like, and I really was leaning into them in the second half of it, just to try and take something off my legs.
Did you get sore elbows using your poles? Was my elbows were killing me for about a week after that event. It was meant.
Not so much. It wasn't so much my elbows. It was like my triceps were killing me, and if I was ever going to do a longer distance, then I think off the back of Glasgow, Edinburgh, my lower back was killing me and my hips were killing me after that. So specifically for this, I incorporated a bunch of exercises, just daily core exercises to try and strengthen that. I think if I was going to do something longer than this or something with more elevation, then I would look at doing sessions just to try and get my triceps and my shoulders a bit more strengthened up.
If you're using them correctly, it should be the tries that the poles hit more.
Well, I must have been doing something right, because it hurt lifting the kids for the next couple of days after that.
I'll have to get in practice, I think.
What about you the day after, Jimmy? How were you?
Just my knees. My knees were sore, and then we decided, it's like, Stevie, take the kids, thought we get to take the kids to Balloch, to the Sea Life Centre, to walk about and run around, and I basically chased them around all day. And see, after the next second day I felt sore. After that I was absolutely fine. Like, legs weren't sore in the slightest, weren't stiff, didn't feel bad. Like, could I easily I just went out and ran, but I knew better that that's no ideally what you should be doing. Hey Mike, you shouldn't really be running daft miles straight after events.
Well, I'd maybe cap it at half marathon the next day.
So I honestly felt fine. I generally felt fine, and then that gives you this kind of, I don't know whether it's a fool's kind of like, you're a bit like, Kim, I felt fine after that. Like, even at the finish, I'm like, I felt fine. Like, didn't come out of the finish dying? I thought, oh, I could do the 100. And then, like, a couple of days later, you come in and you say, I think I'm going to do the 100. So I don't know. We'll see, but
you should join me. But with that, would you ever consider doing the 50 Grand Slam or the Super Grand Slam? Do you know what races are on that? Have you heard of the Grand Slam, Stevie?
Yeah, no, I have, and I think, like, again, I knew about it when I was doing Glasgow Edinburgh, because I'd seen people with Glasgow Edinburgh being the final event of the kind of the series. I've seen people getting the big massive medals.
It's like a dish plate size.
Yeah, like if you think the medals are big that we got for doing this, Jimmy, the slam medals it's literally like the size of
Man.
Aye. Up until probably the start of this year, I would have said no, I wouldn't, because you look at the elevation involved in Wales 50 and Snowdon
Beacons.
and Beacons and the Pennine and things like that. Whereas now it's like, yeah, I could do that.
The seed's planted now.
It's one thing me doing it, but then it's also the family commitment to it, because it's not just it's not just me going off and doing that. It's the logistics of the likes of Scotland 50. I could be away for the entire day, and that's okay. My other half's okay with that. But if I was going to do Wales 50 or something like that, you're away for weekends.
That's exactly what I think it is. It's the logistics, but also they're quite. If I admit, you'll know, Mike, because I think you've got a note of them. They're like, it's like May, June, end of July. They're all like.
It's not. So the Wales 50 is next weekend. So there's not a lot between them.
So you're knocking these out like quite in quick succession. If you're depending what ones you pick, obviously you're talking like over a 5-month period, 6-month period. You're doing a lot of them, in unless you pick Glasgow, obviously. But that's to me that and the logistics would be the problem.
I think that leads us nicely into what is next for both of you guys. Jimmy, I'll come to you first.
Just as I put my note away, I won in the Young Hearts Run Free. I won a place in the Calder Glen 10K on the 28th of June. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to actually have a crack at tanking it as fast as I can go for a wee change, instead of just eating crisps and jelly beans and saunter. I'm going to go and actually, I'm going to go and have a proper crack at it and see how I get on.
Stevie, what about you?
For me, this weekend, I'm going to have a crack at a 4-4-48 challenge. So starting at 8 o'clock on Friday night, I'm going to go out and run my 4 miles, and then every 4 hours, I'm going to run another 4 miles right through until 4 o'clock on Sunday. Distance-wise, 48 miles over 48 hours, that I'm not concerned about that, but it's that mental challenge of, can I get up at midnight and go and run 4 miles? Can I get up at 4 o'clock after having, potentially 2.5, 3 hours sleep and go and run it? And it's just that next step for me of, if I'm wanting to step the distances up, if I'm wanting to run a 75 or run 100, then how do I cope with running? Not so much when it starts, it's going to be light, but it's just that mental thing of, you're tired, you need to get up and go and do it. So yeah, I've got that this weekend, and then
have you got anybody planned, or have you even put it out there for anybody to kind of help you on the early morning runs or anything?
I've not put it out there yet. I've got a mate based up in St Andrews, and he was my friend that came down to run the first half of the recce of the Scotland 50 course with me, and he's one of these guys that you can phone up and say, I'm thinking of going for a run, and he's in before he even knows how far you're going.
Whatever you do, just didn't ask David Roberts, because he'll end up just running for the whole 48 hours. You'll just find him doing laps outside your house. That lad is a madman.
And then he'll take a day off, and then he'll go and run another 40 hours.
Aye.
So my mate Chris, he's up in St Andrews. He's going to do it at the same time that I'm doing it. So I think I'm going to go up to St Andrews on the Saturday, maybe for the midday run, do that with him. And then I think I'll probably put something out on social media if folk want to come and run with me. They're more than welcome to. I'll need to have a think about where I'm going to do my runs. I'll probably do a couple down in Strathclyde Park, just because it's easy miles down there.
I just have this picture.
But yeah, get that out of the way, and then what was that? Sorry,
I just have this picture of Stevie saying, "Does anybody fancy coming and help me go a run through the night?" And he turns up and there's just like 70 folks stood there in the pitch black.
It'll be kind of like when the hardest geezer, the boy in Africa, when he done the end bit, it'll just be like everybody Instagram impressed play, running with Stevie at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I don't think it'll be like that, but yeah, I'll probably stick something up, and folk are welcome to come and join me if they want. And then I'll get that out of the way. I'm then getting married the weekend after that, so I kind of need to put running on hold.
Maybe just run away for that. Aye.
No. And then after that, I need to drop straight back into kind of week 8 of a 16-week training plan, because I'm doing the inaugural Run the Borders event at the end of August. So that's the same guys that do the Run the Blades. They're doing an ultramarathon down in Melrose, and it follows the Borders Abbey way round all the kind of Borders towns.
I did have a
So
wee look at this.
yeah, for me, the goal this year was always 100k. And when the guys heard I was looking to do that, they were like, "Well, do you fancy doing 109k?"
That's the same. It's the same weekend as Loch Ness 24. I had considered doing it, but obviously with current injury situations, I'll not be anywhere near running the kind of distances at that point in time. So I think I am out for both of them, unfortunately. If that's us wrapped up on the races, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Houston. If you can tell me what you've got coming up next.
Saltai 24 next weekend. So first A race in a year, really. Not the first race, obviously. I've done pretty much, I think, a dozen other ultras in the past year. But I think the Wall last year was the last time I really pushed with big intentions of a time, even if there were some big issues in that. But aye.
So what is a Saltire then? Is there? I think there's a few races I've seen that are on this over the same weekend, or are they on the same day, or how does it work?
Yeah, so there's 6, 12 and 24 hours. So the Saltire 24 is a 24-hour looped event, but there's a 6 and a 12-hour option. There's also teams as well. But I'm too selfish to run in a team. I want all the miles. I don't want to be sitting down. I'll get bored from there for 24 hours. I want to go for 24 hours. But 4.2. So for backyard ultras and 24-hour looped events, or looped events in general, they're usually 4.167 miles. And so if you do one loop per hour, you'll hit 50 miles exact in 12 hours, or 100 miles in 24 hours if you hit exact one loop per hour. But this is around 4.18, 4.2-ish miles per loop. So I'm going to go for 100 miles. Half attempted it last year at Loch Ness, but it didn't really go.
So what's your plan then? Are you just going to eat as you go, or are you planning out like rest stops, or are you just going to go for it?
Yeah, so the A goal, I say, I do it kind of back to front to you, like most people. So my overall goal is 100 miles in the 24 hours, but there's also a triple challenge, which is 50k in 6 hours, which is fine. 100k in 12, which would be quite a challenge. I did that at Perth in March. That was 11 and a half hours for 63 miles, but that was flat tarmac. And then 100 miles in 24 hours. But whether I do the triple challenge or not is irrelevant. I want that 100-mile goal. But I've got a spreadsheet pretty much mapped out with timings, kind of pace per mile, in which I'll kind of slow down throughout, rest breaks mixed in. So it's mapped out to try and hit 100k in 12 first. I think it's around 370 feet. So it's not too bad. It's pretty much mostly tread. It's a Knockburn Lock in Banchory, South Aberdeenshire. So it's not too far away from us. But there's also a 0.8 of a mile loop. So after the 23-hour mark, you get put onto a shorter loop. It's kind of a distance up. So you're definitely back in for 24. But it's going to be interesting. My training structure this year has not been what I would advise to try and hit 100 miles in that time. But
who else from the community do we have doing that, Mike? I think I've seen a few people posting stories that were going up. I don't think anybody else is doing the 24 that I've seen, but I know other people.
Yeah, with me with the 24, there's running Mum Leanne.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
And a couple of friends, Katie and Mike. I think they were also at the Fling as well. There's Peta and Ultra Linny that are doing the 24.
Are they doing the 24 as well?
I think they're doing the 24, right? I think it's for a 50th birthday, so they're going to try.
Yeah, bang on, sorry.
Obviously, Susan, I think, is doing the 12, if I'm right.
Yep.
Currently,
There's Curly Steph
Yeah.
that's giving us a show, doing 12. Pauline's doing the 12. So I don't know anyone really in teams per se, but quite a few solo runners. Maybe a few others.
I was speaking separately to Steph and Susan, and I just off the chance I said to them, I was like, "Did you even know each other?" Before press play, and Susan was kind of going into the fact that they never knew each other. Going back to what we mentioned earlier on, Stevie, about being more sociable and stuff. The guys never knew each other last year, and obviously they coined the party at the back phrase in the wee group, and I think it's amazing that from something like that, these guys are going to go and run an ultra. I don't probably know them well enough to know if this was ever within their thoughts when press play and run started, or if this is something that has just managed to, grow arms and legs.
Well, Susan was at Loch Ness
each
last
other.
year.
She was actually, yeah.
So I think she managed to hit her first half marathon distance at Loch Ness, if I remember right.
So it's amazing that these, something as such as a long run club or whatever we want to call it can grow these friendships.
It's like I said
and grow
earlier,
these
it's just
people
when
pushing
you
each
come
other.
up, it's just so positive, and you're just surrounded by positivity, and then that just pushes you on. It just completely pushes you on.
I think that's the thing with looped events as well. If you do want to hit kind of a distance or really try and push a distance in a time frame, looped events are fantastic for doing that, because you don't have to carry all the kit that you've got to carry on a point to point, but when you're going around the loop, you'll be running with people. There's always somebody nearby, and there's always support at the start finish. You're never that far away from your stuff.
And you've seen some of the amazing achievements that people had at Loch Ness 24 last year. I think that in itself will give people a lot of, don't even know the right word. They'll give them a lot of confidence, probably, that if they see other people that they may put themselves in the same bracket in terms of experience for ultra running, distance running, even on roads, then that if they can do it, then why can't they give it a go and why can't they actually do it? So I'm looking forward to seeing how the guys will do, how you do. Should be a good one. What was your goal? Sorry, there. Did we get them?
100 miles.
What's that? What's that in my language?
160k.
Jesus.
But the course record's not far off that. So the course record was set a couple of years ago at 113 miles. So that'd be 181k.
That's disgusting. That's absolutely mental. Well, it definitely sounds like a good one. I'd never really heard about this one before. I might have a wee look at it next year. The 12-hour one sounds a bit more up my street than the 24. Just going to kind of start wrapping it up a wee bit, guys. I've just got a couple of wee mentions that I want to put forward. Emily has started her Sunday Run Club, the 7-7 Run Club on a Sunday morning, 8 o'clock. Previous guest of ours, just obviously want to take a wee shout out, try and help her out with that and build a wee bit of community hopefully for her. I think they're on their second run today. She got, I think, 8 or 9 people, which she was happy with given the fact that the races in Glasgow going forward. We also had Ben Watson, one of my club mates at Newton. He done the wall yesterday and he was raising funds for the My Name is Dodie Foundation. He done it in 16 hours and 52 minutes and 37 seconds, which is 111 kilometres. You guys will keep me right if that is good or not. I have no idea, but fair play to the big man for getting it done. And he also raised £1,020 for charity. I am going to put the link in description of the YouTube video and the Spotify description, and I'll also get Bob to share it on the stories, hopefully. Just want to thank Stevie. Thank you very much for your time, mate. It's been a pleasure. And I'm sure we can get a run soon. Obviously, we did meet at the press play and run runs as well, but we've done it the recce that we've done for the marathon. So again, it's one of these things that is bringing people together, the community, and I think that's why we all love it. Jimmy, Mike, you guys got anything to finish up on?
No, I know a couple of people that did the wall as well. Michelle did the wall this year, and I think did it in 16 hours, something as well. But she was actually supporting or kind of marshalling at it last year and was a massive help at the mile 44 point when I was being a wee bitch and crying and feeling very sorry for myself. I've got somebody else, my ultra journey, who unfortunately had to pull out at mile 38 because a knee went. But well done to everyone that does that. It's especially that middle section, it takes it out of you.
Well, the next episode is obviously going to be all about your Saltire escapades, so I'm looking forward to hearing that. Just once again, Stevie, thank you very much for coming on, mate. We do appreciate it, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, boys.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
See you later.